So believe it or not, this is the parasha of my bar mitzvah, not the one from my birth, as most of us try to, pursue the day of your birth, the Shabbat of your birth, and then you go into your bar mitzvah. But in Argentina, during this time of the year, it's winter break, so we decided to move it almost a month after my 13th birthday. And we ended up with this parasha, Nachamu. Shabbat Nachamu. The Shabbat, so special, also we reread the Ten Commandments. We have the Shema Israel, the Ve'afta, and so many other beautiful things that I didn't even realize when I was bar mitzvah. But Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of comfort, of consolation. From now on until Rosh Hashanah, we have 7 weeks to count the days, to reflect, to comfort others, to comfort ourselves, and to move into what it means in the next 7 weeks to run into the new year, the Jewish New Year. And in the middle, we get beautiful things as the month of Elul. And believe it or not, from today until the creation, not of the world that we celebrate in Rosh Hashanah, but the creation of the human, right? We have 40 days to go. So this 40 appears and shows all the time in our tradition. And I was thinking about how much consolation is needed today in this world, how much consolation is needed in our lives, not to mention the consolation that we need here in our beautiful Miami area. A lot of catastrophes happening around the world, tragedies, and ours is not different. And it touches very, very close. Now, how to comfort, how to console, how to give consolation to others has been always a very poignant and a very very important subject for the rabbis. 10 years ago, I was a song leader at Camp Ramah in New England. And on a Friday like this, I would say 10 years and 2 weeks ago, I received a call from Argentina, and they told me that my father passed away. As you can imagine, I was heading into Shabbat in a summer camp with 700 campers, 80 Israelis from Israel, 90 counselors, 50 parents who worked at camp. I mean, it was almost impossible even to conceive, to think about what to do. I was frozen. I talked to my brothers, and we were all here in the United States. And as soon as we could, we tried to do something with that and to try to get to Argentina as soon as possible. And we got there. The funeral was done. We got there on Sunday, and I returned in the middle of the week. First, I returned to my house. My wife then and my kids were at camp, and I went alone. I came back alone. And the first stop that I did was my shul in Needham, Massachusetts. And we did the beginning of some Shiva. In Argentina, we couldn't get Shiva. It was very difficult. And people came to me. My colleagues, rabbis, cantors, my congregation, whoever was there in the summer tried to be there as much as possible. I did 1 day of Shiva there, and I returned to camp. Something I could not even conceive how I was going to do. Do I work? Do I continue being the song leader, the cheerleader of everyone's when I, myself, am mourning? So I sat in the cabin for the rest of the Shiva, and I sat on the floor, and I didn't know what to say, what to do. I was lost. I was confused. I was famished for sure. I was very confused with the setting and what I was really experiencing. People didn't know. The kids asked, little kids asked, what's going on with Gaston? What's going on with Cantor G? You know, he's not playing music. He's sitting in his cabin. And that was an amazing opportunity, a teaching opportunity for every counselor to explain what a Shiva is, to explain how to console, how to comfort. And the kids will come, they knock the door, they will bring me some food, they will be with me, they will sit on the floor with me. It was just beautiful. And believe me, they didn't know what to do, they didn't know how to do it, but they did it. They have their hearts, and they felt for me. And the best of everything happened just as we arrived to the Shabbat of the Shiva. And as you know, on Shabbat, we don't keep Shiva. We have to suspend it until we return to it. And I was waiting just outside of the site where we would recite the beautiful Shabbat melodies, and we would sing all together. Again, 900 people on one site. And they get to the Lecha Dodi, and as you know, when we get to the Lecha Dodi, after we finish, they try to refrain the mourners to be in the service, and then they bring in community as to, for the hours that we have left for Shabbat, just to stay there. And they recite together the words of comfort that the rabbis gave us as a gift. May God, who comforts Israel and the mourners of Zion, grant you solace in your bereavement. And many times we are in the cemetery and we form the two lines and we just recite these words to the mourners. And we recite it sometimes when we are here at Shul. I heard, and this is my memory, and I want to share with you, I heard those words as one gigantic voice. Everyone in unison said the words of comfort and consolation, and I broke in tears. Amakom yenachem. It was a huge voice, almost like one voice, almost like it would be God's voice from, any Mel Brooks or, Charles Heston movie. Like a huge voice that you imagine, when God will be speaking to you in those movies. The community became one, and I became one with them, and they became one with me. When I think about this parasha, thinking about the Shema Israel, thinking about the God is one, I think about God is oneness. And I think, in essence, the fear that we get when we have to console someone else, when we have to comfort the mourner. Sometimes we don't know what to say, and we don't know what to say, and then we just say anything, and many times we say the wrong thing, or sometimes we don't get to comfort, not to even call someone, because we are afraid to say the wrong thing. But when you become one with the other person, you just need to be with that person at the moment, to stay with them. You don't have to say anything. Just be with them. Become one with their pain. Become one with what they can't hold at that moment on their own. Let them know that they're not alone, that you are with them. This morning was the yortzeit of Shmuel, of Samuel Elias, and Ellen Elias, in the minyan this morning, she brought a beautiful text from Rabbi Larry Hoffman. And I'm going to read just a beautiful part that he wrote, beautiful here. He says the following. He says, how then was Israel supposed to take comfort from Nachamu? The Hasidic tradition answers that question by looking at the whole phrase, Nachamu, Nachamu ami. Take comfort, my people. So note the word my. Why didn't God just say, take comfort, or take comfort, Israel? Why specify my people? The people needed mostly to hear the word my, says Rabbi Baruch, who was the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. They needed God's assurance. You remain my people. Even in your grief, you will not abandon me. I will not abandon you. You are not alone. Rabbi Hoffman says that the ultimate terror, in anyone is that we will be left alone, abandoned, when we are most vulnerable. That may be why our own moment of dying frighten us. Why we miss others whose presence was part of our everyday life when they were alive. And why it's so cruel for our friends to stop calling if you do not quickly recover from mourning the death of those we loved. So here's our worst nightmare coming true. We are left doubly alone, abandoned first by one who dies, and then again by those who still living, whom we thought we could count on. So along comes Shabbat Nachamu, says Rabbi Hoffman, with the kindest words we will ever read. We are never alone. And in the Song of Songs, the Shir HaShirim, God says to Israel, Ani vedodi vedodi li. I am my beloved and my beloved is mine. And that's beautiful words. They also say the bride and the groom, as we think about Tu Ve'av, finding our soulmate too. And what's the pact that binds God? Every time we put that feeling, also it's said under the chuppah from the prophet Hosea, we say, Ve'erastich li le'olam. I will betroth you forever. When our loved one dies, God never says, hey, move on. Instead, we hear, take comfort. I am yours and you are mine. I betroth you forever. Look for me. Therefore, even when you grieve, for I am there somewhere, somehow, at your side. People report the sign of God's presence in subtle ways. In the still of night, a glimpse of a larger mystical truth, our kinship with all that is, says Rabbi Hoffman. And more immediately, when friends do manage to remain loyal, we may feel God's touch in their continuing embrace. See God's reflections in their eyes. A hint of God may be found where we least expect it. A split seconds, certainly that our loneliness, though painful, is not the final word. Nachamu's message is all we have to give, but it is enough, not advice, but being there and saying, like God, you are not alone. God waits with you, patiently understanding what you go through. And so do we. From that, Nachamu, take comfort. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, Yomar Elohechem. Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, Yomar Elohechem. Dabru Alev Yerushalayim.